Now then, limited time, not many paints. Sounds like my friend. He's just getting into the hobby. So, this time, I'm going to paint one of his Skitari Rangers and come up with a scheme for him that he can knock out in under an hour. Now then, Skitari Rangers. Pretty classic theme. Minimal colours. Knocking it out in under an hour. So, we're using 8 colours. I'll flash them up on the screen. The minis have already been pre-assembled and base coated in a gunmetal metallic. You'll be able to get these done pretty fast. We're hitting the entire model with a wash of Nuln oil. Don't go any further until this is dry. Obviously when you're working on multiple units, by the time you get to the last one, first one will be dry and you can go on. Next up, add a little bit of water to the heavy khaki, and we're going to hit the inside and the outside of the jacket. Anything basically that we want to be either beige or end up being red. When you're doing this, make sure not to hit the same area with the brush while it's still wet, otherwise you'll tear the paint and rip it off, and that will mess up the nice, even coats that we want. Just hit it all, make sure you get good coverage. You might have to hit it 2, maybe 3 times. Remember, thin paints is the key. Okay, so let's get the golds based. Retributor armour. Again, thin your paint a little bit with some water. You don't want it claggy. Metallics do have a tendency to clag the brush a little bit. Use some separate water as well to clean your brush. Don't contaminate your decent water. Ideally have 2 pots, one for metallic paints, one for non-metallic paints. And if you can, use a different brush, but that's not essential. Okay, so now we're going to hit anything with a little bit of the Abaddon black that we want to be black or grey later on. Again, don't forget to thin your paints, and don't worry about if you touch any of the parts of the model that you don't want to be that colour. We can easily go back with base coats. That's where we keep everything on the palette while we're working, so we can go backwards and forwards. Be a little bit careful on the trousers if you want, it saves you time later on. Okay, this is something that often is forgotten by people. If you want something to be brighter, hit with a base coat of white or another light shade earlier on. It really brings out the colours later and makes them pop, especially if you want something to be glowing or draw attention to it, like the eyes or the plasma coils on this gun. Again, thin your paint, make sure it's that milky consistency. Don't worry if you have to go over it multiple times, just make sure it's dry between coats. This is not a problem when you're working on multiple models at a time. Again, don't worry about being neat here, we can easily go back and touch up parts that we touch with a brush. It's really important to make sure the eyes are quite neat, so make sure the paint is really, really thin. I can't stress this enough. Onto the wooden leather. I'm just going to use the brown for this, for both of these. Don't worry, we'll mix them up later so they look different in terms of texture. But right now, just get that brown on there. Be as neat as you can. Again, thin coats. Going over the metallics can be quite difficult with these layer paints. Right, again, this is another one of those times where it's really, really important to have thin paint. Run it into the recesses, again, making sure it's as thin as possible. You might have to do this multiple times. You should be used to me saying this by now, but thin layers. We're going to get the gory red and we're going to base coat the entire jacket on the outside. You're going to have to do 2, maybe 3 coats of this to get to a good level of opacity. Remember, don't go back over an area while it's still wet. You will rip the paint and tear it and ruin that smooth finish that we're trying so hard to maintain. A good tip is definitely to brace your arms against each other and your hands. Notice how I'm holding my hands against each other. It gives me a nice stable base to work from and helps me stay nice and neat. Now's a really good time to neaten everything up. If you have touched parts of the model with some of the other colours, clean it up now before we progress to the shading part. It's much easier to do that at this stage. First lot of highlights, mix a little bit of white in with the black, and then along the highest points for the trousers where the folds are, just run the brush down it, even move it from side to side, give it a bit of texture. It's entirely up to you how you want your finish to be. Again, this is going to be one of those thin paint times. We're going to jump between the black and the white to get the Mechanicus symbol. It's quite complicated to paint, but it's nothing that you won't be able to tackle. Just go slow, take your time, and jump backwards and forwards, keeping it nice, clean and crisp. Okay, we're going to wash the entire model now with Agrax Earthshade. Work on small areas of the model at a time. You don't have to do it all in once, otherwise you'll end up with it pooling in places you don't want. If it does pool, wick it away with a dry brush. Keep an eye on the bottom of the jacket where the folds are. You don't want it to coffee stain too much. Get a base coat on the base for the crackle paint layer that's showed through. Once the Agrax is dried everywhere, we're going to layer back up with the gory red and bring out some of the brightness in the jacket. Don't go into the recesses, we want to keep those nice and dark. So look where the light naturally hits the mini, especially on the folds, and start painting in triangles, going from a small tip at the top where it's pulled in, for instance, at its waist, and then getting wider towards the bottom. How far you want to go on that is wholly dependent on your own taste. Just do what feels natural. I tend to go with a fairly wide highlight at the bottom, but not all the way into the recesses, obviously. Again, you're going to have to do this multiple times. Right, we're going to get the base sorted. Use your Iron Earth, Martian Iron Earth, and apply it to the base. Thicker will lead to bigger cracks. There's loads of tutorial videos out there on how to apply this stuff. Don't use a brush, it will kill it. Okay, hit a bit of white into the heavy khaki, and we're just going to brush that along the edges of the robe to create the highlight. Concentrate towards the bottom parts of it, where the light had hit, and around the hood, the bottom of the sleeves, basically anywhere where the red and the khaki mix. Okay, let's go with the highlighting of the robe now. Okay, so mix a little bit of the heavy khaki in with the red to create a little bit of a brighter tone of red. Not pink, don't go over the top, it's only a small amount you want in there. And concentrate that towards the edge of the hood and the bottom of the coat as well. The folds on the arm, that sort of thing. If you look where I'm painting, it gives you a good idea. Again, if you're stuck on where to paint this, hold the model into the light at a 90-degree angle, straight down, and look where the light naturally hits it. Those are where you want to apply the highlights. Don't go over the top, keep nice and thin lines here. You could even stipple on some highlights if you want to go for some different textures on there. It's entirely up to you. Again, working on little triangles is a really good technique when you're starting out. So that khaki has turned out to be a really useful colour. Mixed in with a little bit of brown to make a lighter brown. We're going to use that on the wood gun stock just to highlight the edges. Be careful here, it can be quite tricky, so again, brace your hands together, take your time and just run the tip of your brush along, or bounce the tip of it if you're feeling daring. If you want, you can mix a little bit more of the heavy khaki in, just to bring the highlights out towards the sharpest edges of the wood stock. So look where there's 90-degree angles, that type of thing. That's where you should be concentrating your second layer of highlights on, or even your third layer if you want to go that far. It's entirely up to you, but we're trying to keep it fast and efficient, so 1 or 2 is more than enough. So another thin mix here, mix a little bit of white in with the Warlord purple and some water, and run that to the bottom recesses of the plasma coils and anywhere else it wants to be pink. So on the back part, you notice there's some parts at the top. You just want to run that in there. We want to stain it. It's almost glazing, but not quite. Make sure it's really thin. Then add a little bit more white if you like, and concentrate that again, like we did with wood stock, at the tightest angles. So the top of the plasma coils and the top of the power pack. Don't worry, we'll come back to this later. Right, we're going to highlight the metallics now. So mix a little bit of that silver in with the gold to create a nice mid-tone. And again, do what we did with the wood stock. Just hit the corners of the gold. We don't need to go too far with this. Just the brightest points. Again, using that technique, if you're not entirely sure where you want to hit, hold a light directly above it, or the minute 90 degrees to a light, and you'll see where naturally hits it. At the end of the day, you're not really going to go wrong. It's still going to look pretty good, so don't worry too much about making it super realistic. Concentrating on the face as well, the top of the eyes, that sort of area. So that's where we want to draw attention to. So take your time, brace your hands, you'll be fine. Again, don't forget, use some separate water when we're working with metallics. Okay, back to the glowing gun. So get a little bit more Warlord purple, tiny bit of white, some water, and we're going to wash that almost entirely over the gun and plasma areas. It should be a little bit whiter now. It'll dry quite light, so don't worry about going on there with the Warlord purple. Again, the highlights you put on previously will still show through. The paint is very translucent, so you'll be fine, don't worry. Notice how we can see that in the top corners now. Adding a little bit more white to the mix, just dot each of the individual power coils if you can. If you can't do that, don't worry, no biggie. Dry your brush slightly and just run it along the sharpest corners. You'll get the same effect and it'll look just as good. You could even go so far as to dot some parts of the middle of the gun. It just gives it a little more of an added effect if you've not got an airbrush and you don't want to start messing around doing glazing to get a glow effect. It'll still give that feeling of heat and power coming off of it without taking too much time. We're almost there now with it, guys. Come on, stay with it. Okay, so a little bit more white. We're going to mix it in with the blue, tiny little bit, just to bring out a lighter blue, and then dot the very center of the eyes. And don't forget any lenses that might be around the miniature as well that you previously painted blue. get them as close to the centre of the eyes as you can, and the top corner of the lens. So with some pure white now, and some of that grey we mixed earlier, we're going to highlight the Adamex symbol in both the white and the black. So pure white for the white part, and a little bit of that grey we used on the trousers and cables for the black part. We're going to hit some of the other black parts as well with that grey highlight. Top of the cables. Okay, a little more highlighting now, so add a little bit more white to that khaki mix, and just the very corners now of the front of the jacket and the hood. That'll really bring attention to the face. Don't go over the top, don't redo everything, just look where I'm hitting. The top corners, just the very highest points where the light had hit. And we're there, guys. Paint the base black or whatever colour you go for the rest of your army, and you're done. Stick it together. And there we go. A quick, easy and effective colour scheme that you can use to knock out a squad of Skitari Rangers over the course of a couple of evenings, using nothing but simple techniques and a few colours and a little bit of mixing. That's all you need to do. Well then, that's it for my first video. If you made it this far, thanks for watching, I appreciate it. If you liked it, maybe you could leave us a like. I'm planning on doing some more videos over the next couple of weeks, and I'm going to concentrate on tutorials and hobby related stuff. Experimenting with different paints, different techniques, different finishes, stuff that I might not normally want to do as I'm painting my army for gaming, but I'm going to allow myself the time to kind of share that with other people that might find it useful. So, I guess all that remains to be said is thank you to Dan for supplying me with one of his Skitari and giving me the opportunity to put this together for him. If you do have any suggestions on things that you might want to see me paint, projects you might want to see me tackle, please do get in touch. Either slide into my inbox, leave a comment down below, hit me up on Instagram. You can find me, Forge of Solace everywhere. Well, that's it. I'm done. It's taken me far too long to edit this, far too long to put it together. If I'm going to carry on doing this, I definitely need to level up, not just my painting, but my video editing, it seems. Okay, see ya.